Everyone, and welcome. My name is Alyssa Mayers, and I'm very excited to be here with you all. Tonight, we have a program for you that was developed through a collaboration between the Harlem International Film Festival and Columbia University's Zuckerman Institute. Tonight, we have a program that includes the screening of the film First Chances, followed by a talkback and guided meditation. So let's get started. And we invite you to go to the link that will be displayed on the screen shortly, or that may already be in the chat, and view the film First Chances. The film is approximately 25 minutes long. And once that has concluded, come right back here for the talkback and meditation at 7:30. Enjoy.
Hi, all. I hope you had a great time watching the film. I'm Chandler Phillips. I use she, her pronouns. Georgia is my home, and I'm currently living in the beautiful Brooklyn. I'm a manager of engagement and impact at Sundance Institute, and I'll be your moderator for tonight. To start us off, I'm going to introduce our panelists and practitioners. After surviving and thriving for nearly a decade in prison, Timothy Jackson stepped back into his local community, prepared to win against all odds. Since being released, Timothy has become the husband to his intelligent and courageous wife, Keisha, and father to 3 strong, beautiful children. Jackson is a business owner and pursuing a degree in sociology and social sciences. Alex Luchsinger is originally from Washington, D.C., but grew up in Tampa, Florida. Alex worked as a journalist for CBS News in New York and covered the war in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Now a professor at Elon University in North Carolina, Alex continues to work as a freelance journalist and documentary filmmaker. Robert E. Fullilove is the Associate Dean for Community and Minority Affairs, Professor of Clinical Socio-Medical Sciences, and the co-director of the city's research group. Dr. Fullilove has authored numerous articles in the area of minority health, serves on multiple boards focusing on health issues, and was designated a National Associate of the National Academies of Science. Dr. Jeff Gardere is a board-certified clinical psychologist and an ordained interfaith minister. In addition to having a private practice in Manhattan, he is an associate professor and course director of behavioral medicine at Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine in New York City. Dr. Jeff Gardere is also a prolific author of 4 books and a contributing author of half a dozen books. Our practitioner for the evening, Keri Ashkenazy, is a meditation teacher and holistic health coach at Integrative Medical New York. Keri helps her clients learn tools such as meditation techniques and healthy eating and exercise protocols to reduce chronic stress and inflammation. She has a master's degree in social organizational psychology from Columbia University, where she also works full-time developing faculty at the Graduate Business School. Thank you so much all for being here tonight. So excited to get into this conversation. And before we begin, just letting the audience know that you can ask questions in the chat. There's going to be an open Q&A portion, and so I'll look out to see what questions people have. So first off, we are going to talk to Timothy and Alex, and just wanted to hear about how did this collaboration come to be?
I guess I'll start us off. Thank you for having me, everyone. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited that I was able to make it tonight. So back in 2018, I actually was listening to a podcast. I love podcasts. I encourage everyone to listen to them. And I heard about an organization that Timothy was involved with called Defy Ventures. And I chased down this organization. I said, I'd love to do a documentary involving one of the entrepreneurs that they train entrepreneurs that are incarcerated, and they also have a post program. And they actually did not engage with me. They said, we can't do this at this time. They were restructuring. They had something going on. So about 6 months, or not even 6 months later, maybe a few months later, I was able to re-engage with them. And that's how I connected with Timothy. Timothy is one of their, great star entrepreneurs. And, I finished this film at the end of 2019. So it's been a little while since the film was finished, but that started, I guess, our sort of romance, if you will.
Yes. And for those, Alex is coming from some family emergencies. So again, we really appreciate you being here tonight. Timothy, what was this process like for you? When Alex reached out, what were your thoughts and responses? And then what was it like going through this journey of extreme reflection on your life and your future?
I'm very, very grateful to be here as well. First and foremost, I'm just honored. I feel blessed and privileged to have this opportunity to have worked with with Alex, and then just to even be able to be on this platform with you awesome individuals. But the process was pretty scary and intimidating in the beginning. You know, it's like, you know, when someone wants to document your story, and, you know, it could potentially be made public, you know, and you haven't necessarily fully grasped, you know, the reality of your transition. For me, I was a little fearful at first, because I'm thinking like, man, people might see this and not want to give me no business. You know what I'm saying? People might see this and judge me. But at the same time, I had already encountered enough interactions with law enforcement that I had, you know, previous run-ins with certain, you know, individuals who were so-called enemies, you know, when I was, you know, in that active life of gangbanging. And I had, you know, I had overcome some obstacles, you know, that I dealt with on my, you know, within myself, you know, that, you know, led to some insecurities. And so I kind of used, you know, that momentum to overcome that. And then, you know, once I met Alex, and once, you know, we, you know, just began to dialogue, he all the more just helped me to just relax and understand all the more how important it was for the story to be told, and potentially, you know, end up in this type of situation.
Yeah, well, we're so grateful that we're able to just to learn with you and see all that you've done, and to witness, you know, the work that you're doing in your community. And Tim and Alex, question for you. So when we discussed this a little bit before, just, you know, the positionality a director has to the subject is so important in documentary, especially as it is a field that does have a long history of white folks telling stories of people of color. And Chiwe Yang says something on this of the parallels between documentary and democracy as systems of representation are important to keep in mind. Who is representing whom and why, and how is that person interpreting and channeling the experiences of those they represent? Can you speak a little bit to that, Alex, of what this experience was like as a white director of a film about Timothy and about mass incarceration, a system that disproportionately affects people of color?
Yes, that's a great question. So growing up, I had a friend who got caught up in the justice system, right? He's still incarcerated. I learned through his brother about him, in and out of rehab, felony conviction, out on parole. And parole, by the way, is such a pernicious part of the whole incarceration system. You're basically, and Timothy has said this to me, you're basically still locked up, but out on the street. So you have to maintain a job. You're a convicted felon. You have to retain a residency, or else you violate parole. And there are all these other elements too. And by the way, you can't vote anymore, right? So you get your rights taken away from you, and you're supposed to succeed, right? So I do have some background in that. I do not have any background on what it's like to be a person of color in the United States of America. So I approach this in a very sort of open-minded way. I really relied on Timothy to help me, guide me, to help me. You know, I would not have been able to do this without Timothy. Not only did he introduce me to people who I probably wouldn't have come across, he also took me everywhere. I mean, it was like every time I'd be with Timothy, it was like, put on your seatbelt and hold on. I mean, he is just go, go, go. What you see in that film doesn't even really capture as well as I wanted to just how busy it is. So Timothy was my entree into a community that I know people in communities of color, but this was a totally different situation. And, you know, the film, what I was trying to really get across is hope, inspiration. Here's what you can do. Timothy embodies those principles and those virtues. My goal was not to dwell on his past. It was to look forward, because he's doing so many amazing things. My next project, and I know we'll probably touch on this a bit down the line, but has to do with mass incarceration and parole and the generational damage that those things cause in families.
Mm-hmm. And before I move on to some of, the details that happen within the film, Timothy, did you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, I think that was probably, now thinking about it, that was probably one of the things that I, thought about in the beginning of the story being told too, was like, who was telling the story?
Mm-hmm.
Like someone that might not necessarily be able to relate or tell the story. I mean, as individuals, I believe no one can really tell our story like the individual that experienced it. But then you have someone like Alex, who just is who he is as an individual, you know what I'm saying? And he just, with giving me opportunity to share with him and come with me everywhere, it was like he was able to just take it all in and convince me through just, what he offered as a filmmaker and just as a person that has the interests that he has and the experience that he has of dealing with people, that he would be able to convey the story well. And so ultimately, all of the little insecurities that I may have had about, someone telling my story that wasn't of color was just overwhelmed, by our experience as individuals in the reality of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thank you for that. And then Dr. Fullilove and Gardere, as well as, Alex, Timothy, there's the scene that happens in the film when Timothy is sitting in the prison, he's looking out of the window, and he talks about systems impact trauma. Can you speak to this type of trauma and the effect it has on individuals and communities?
Which of us would you like to speak to that?
Either one, both even.
I'm someone who has spent a considerable amount of time looking at issues of trauma, largely through the prism of what happened 20 years ago, 25 years ago, really, when crack cocaine was inflicting terrible damage on many poor communities, not just of color, just poor communities struggling with all the issues that confront any neighborhood that has large numbers of folk who are struggling with addiction and don't know what to do. The nation's answer to its widespread struggles with drug addiction was to say, let's put them in prison. And as a consequence, we, as you well know, are a nation that holds 5% of the world's population, but incarcerates 25% of the folk who are doing time behind bars. The impact that this has had on the individuals who are locked up, the impact that it's had on the families that have lost a member, folk who have a loved one in prison, say we're in prison as well. I mean, if you think about all the ways in which this completely disrupts life in communities, disrupts life for individuals who are struggling with these kinds of issues, you're talking about a system that has the capacity to inflict pain at just about every single turn. And the problem is, it's not just the event of experiencing pain, it's all of the aftermath. It's the fact that it lingers, that people who've undergone this kind of trauma can live with the consequences for decades. So yes, looking out the window and seeing a system that probably at that moment of time was responsible for inflicting a great deal of pain, meant also that you were looking at a system that you would remember. Not only would you remember being in there, you'd be haunted by it in your dreams, in your everyday encounters with folk who find out suddenly, oh, you've been incarcerated. Oh, those are the kinds of things that I think create the residual damage that mass incarceration has inflicted on American society. And yeah, it's one of those things that has us looking beyond the individuals who are hit and looks instead at what happens in a collection of events, people, and institutions that has the capacity to do this kind of damage to both individuals and communities. So it's something that we struggle with as we as a nation try to make sense of what do we do with mass incarceration and how do we heal the wounds that it's inflicted on so many people?
Yes, what you said about how the pain lingers really, really sucked, because it also, in the film, you see Timothy, your family and your young ones, and this impact that it goes to you as well as those after you, and the ways that we break generational trauma. And so it's beautiful to see how invested you are also just like in your family and in the healing that comes from it. Thanks so much, Dr. Fullilove. Dr. Gardere, do you have anything to say on that?
Well, I would just add that when we look at the number of people of color in the world in proportion to the ones who are in prison, certainly we are disproportionately placed in prisons. But this is something that is part of the structural racism of our country. This is the way that it was set up. This is the way that it was designed to make sure that you have divisions, between different people, between different cultures, between different races. So, Timothy being in jail is part of a system that was set up for him to be in jail, for many of us to be in jail. I thought Alex was very honest when he talked about he knows a lot about the prison system, but he doesn't, he can't speak for people of color because he doesn't have that experience of being a person of color. And so what we deal with each and every day is the trauma of a government, of an America that is set up where our children even, are more at risk for being in trouble with police officers, where we have a school to prison pipeline where many of our kids, especially in lower socioeconomic areas, when they are perceived or actually get into some sort of a conflict, instead of being offered remediation, conflict resolution, opportunities to find out what may be going on as far as psychodynamics in the home, in the area. Again, all of those things that have been set up by a system that is radicalized with regard to race and racism. Instead, they are now introduced into the mechanisms that take them into the jail. So it is a traumatization that begins at birth, that goes straight into adulthood. And kudos to Tim and to some of the people that he worked with in the film who have done well in their lives now, who've been able, and when we say that term, beat the system, we mean beat the system to now be able to go out there and be able to work towards the dreams that they've always wanted to be able to achieve, still knowing that the system is set up that they can only go so far.
Yes to beating the system. Man, I have many other thoughts and questions. Before I go to the next one, Timothy, Alex, did you want to say anything on that?
You just hit that right on the head, man. I mean, that's why I just believe, like, especially at this point for me, that's just why I want to. That's why I'm just pursuing education, man, because. And just because of just experiencing the time that I have post incarceration and understanding that I have come this far, I am still very limited and can only go so far, based off of what is, what I'm saying, my background, my ability to be able to communicate. Having transitioned from that life to this life gets me to a certain distance. I mean, gets me, to a certain level. But being able to become all the more educated about what I've been through, where I'm at, and where I'm going, considering everything the doctor just expressed, I believe gives us the keys to get through those doors that are locked on a lot of us that can only get so far, if that makes any sense.
One other piece that if I may just add something is, this gang registry is another layer of complexity, because let's say we move past the felony conviction point as a nation. This gang registry is another hurdle that people have to jump, even though they haven't been gang affiliated for years upon years upon years. So there are multiple layers of complexity to this that really need to be re-examined and fixed. And Dr. Gardere and Fullilove were both right with, we have a constitution where some of the authors of the Constitution were slave owners, right? So, I mean, that needs a massive re-examination as a nation. That includes everybody.
Yes. And yeah, and speaking about systems, something that I found myself reflecting on as I was watching the film was, how the system of mass incarceration is a product of white supremacy and slavery. And at the same time, these systems that Timothy is accessing opportunities are largely held by white men. So, the CEO and mentors at Defy Ventures, the venture capitalists at the pitch. And so I think it speaks to this need for a redistribution of power within the social sector to those who are within marginalized communities. And so I think it also emphasizes how important this work that Timothy is doing, of being within community and leading community. And I'd love to hear from the panelists just your thoughts around this idea of community members having power and leading within social sectors and the difference that can play in healing and social change. So anyone from the panel can speak to that.
One of the things that I've been doing for the last 10 years has been teaching in the Barred Prison Initiative. That means that for a considerable portion of my teaching responsibilities, I've been in state prisons in New York talking to individuals about public health. I'm a professor of public health, and I think anybody who's aware of what's happening with COVID-19 is particularly aware that if you want to talk about public health in a place where the problems that we're struggling with today are really rampant, go inside a jail or a prison. Those are the places that have the highest concentrations of COVID-19, other than nursing homes for the elderly, that you're going to find in the United States. And we're still struggling to figure out whether or not they should get vaccinated. We're still struggling to figure out whether folk over the age of 60 who've been incarcerated for more than 20 years and can't possibly do any harm, but who are at risk of dying from COVID-19 should be allowed to be released. So teaching public health in a system like that definitely has its challenges. But the point that Timothy made is that there are so many people in my classes, almost all of them, who have the same talents, who have the drive and the ability that Timothy displayed, who upon getting out have done really amazing things. I am really very proud of the fact that a substantial number of the folk that I taught public health courses to on the inside are now doing public health work in communities, from the level of doing contact tracing and helping people get into testing, to actually thinking through some of the issues that we worry about most when we look at the impact that mass incarceration has had on the health of communities. So what I know is that these are folk who are really demonstrated that the power of knowledge resides not just on giving them a sense of what's going on, it's what they're able to do once they've been released, once they're finally on the outside. It's amazing to think that, as Timothy pointed out, with all of the restrictions that are imposed on somebody who's formerly incarcerated, folks still manage to do really quite miraculous work. And I keep hoping that people will see the wisdom of thinking about what we do to convert prisons as places of punishment to places where rehabilitation can occur. Because the contribution that folk like Timothy can make to the communities to which they return is enormous. And I think the most important part about this film is that folks who doubt whether or not it's okay to coddle criminals surely can understand that in a democracy like ours, if folk can succeed when their chances of success have been so limited, then why not open up the possibility to make all the things that in a democratic society we should be celebrating? Why not make those things available? Because the communities to which they return need them, will do greatly under the leadership that they are uniquely positioned to provide. I mean, I think everything about what I'm hoping this film will do is give people an understanding that when we do provide chances to folk who have the capacity to take advantage of them, really good things can happen. Let me stop there.
Yeah, no, I would love to just hear you all day. That is incredible. And what you said about, folks who are given from the beginnings, these systems are set up against and still thrive and still are just thought leaders in our nation. What it would it look like, right? If these barriers are taken down, if we provided like you're talking about, and I think it just speaks to also the resilience of communities. So thank you for that.
And thank you, Dr. Fullilove, for doing that work, being forward-minded enough to understand that it's not about being punitive, but it's about rehabilitation. It's about addressing everyone where they are, whatever a weakness may be, or an emotional conflict may be, or a lack of opportunity, or a system that's set up against them. If they are in there, unfortunately, by their power or by someone else, that it is about realizing what their potential is. As Timothy did, he came out of there like a freight train. They had to slow him down a little bit because he was doing so many things and was so hungry to accomplish the things that he's done now. And we've forgotten what it means to have redemption. We've forgotten what it means, to be able to recycle individuals so that they can come out of a situation better than what they went in there with. And that's the work you've been doing. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And if I may, it's because of men and women that step into the role that you have been, I'm sure, just extremely effective in prisons, that give individuals such as myself the courage to even consider taking opportunities outside of incarceration. A lot of us struggle, and I'm sure a lot of us struggle with just stepping out of that environment and being confident and comfortable, post incarceration, because that was my struggle. I stopped gangbanging. I stopped doing everything that led me, to go to prison, in prison. But volunteers and individuals that stepped into the incarcerated setting, they poured and poured, and they came back and they came back and they poured and they poured, and they provided information to help us to get rid of these self-limiting beliefs and embrace these self-freeing beliefs. And then the day comes when you step out of the facility, and you're challenged with the reality of okay, all of that you did was inside of the facility. Now you outside of the facility, and you've never done it outside of the facility. But then, there's the Fullilove, that just all of what you pour into us, it just, it reinforces and it manifests all the more, and gives us the necessary courage and confidence to take step after step, and challenge every negative thought with every positive or empowering thing that you instill into us. So thank you so much, because I that was my saving grace, other than and next to the Lord were the Fulliloves, man. They came in there, and made it count with us day in and day out, argued with the COs, because they wanted to get in so bad, when there was lockdowns, and fought to empower us. And so, I second everything the doctor said. Thank you so much.
And I'm really thinking that your story will inspire other folk like me, because I think all I did was hold up a mirror to my students and say, I'll tell you what I see when I look at that image. And because it was something that they recognized in themselves, as I know was the case with you, Timothy, it was always there. But somebody had to show you, you probably haven't seen this very well. There it is. There it is. And then look at what's happened to you. I think Dr. Jeff was absolutely correct to point out in the film where the guy is telling you, dude, you got to slow down.
Right.
So many people, when they're out 10, 15 years on the inside, and you've been dreaming, as you very eloquently describe it in the film, of what you will do once the day comes when you're back on the street. And then, oh my God, it's actually happened. And the day isn't long enough. There isn't enough time in the universe to give you the opportunity to do all the things that you dreamed of doing. And I think more than anything else, it's not so much that we created you. We simply released you. And in the best possible sense, we gave that intellect of yours, which is really quite powerful, quite considerable, an opportunity to be expressed, to be put into action. And you've done all the rest. I do not want to take credit for what I see as something that is uniquely yours. I just want to have been one of the people who was there in the system to watch you and cheer you on.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to add, Timothy, obviously, Dr. Fullilove just hit it on the head. He had it in them, and so many of those people have so much talent. When they do get out and they can harness that talent, they soar. I've met tons of them. I interviewed 10 different people that were incarcerated, and they were hungry, and some of them are out now that are doing phenomenally well. Stories of like not knowing what Google is and things like that, or the internet. I mean, they knew what the internet was, but they missed the whole social media wave. They were incarcerated for so long, and they're under the table Googling things at meetings and things, and they're teaching themselves Excel and all kinds of stuff that most people don't do. Most people who've never been incarcerated will take the time to do it. And Timothy has done all that. And the mentors he's had along the way, including Officer Valdivinos, including Larry Burns, his guidance counselor. Mark Bowles has been a godsend to Timothy. Mark and Timothy, they are tight. And Timothy just has this coalition of mentors around him. I couldn't capture everything Timothy does. I need like a huge crew and to be on scene all the time. I did this film solo, and I hope someone sees this and does even a better film if Timothy will let them into his life like he so graciously did to me.
One of the things that we don't talk about is when we become mentors to others, that's the gift that keeps on giving, right? This is what we all do. This is what Tim is doing now. He's a mentor, and they'd probably rather hear from Tim and Dr. Fullilove than people who are outside of the system, coming in to try to do something. That mentorship not only makes those people who we work with better, but it makes the people who are mentors, it makes them better, because it's not about who is the doctor or the CO or the filmmaker or who's the prisoner, or, it really is about being able to touch each other through our hearts, through empathy, through respect, and through love. We see with what's going on in society right now, where in the past 4 years, we've been ruled by hate, the importance of love and reaching out and coming together, despite race, sexuality, whatever the situation may be, because we are all in it together. And if we don't pull each other up, pull ourselves up in the work that we do, then we truly are lost. And we're seeing that right now in real time.
And there's a question in the chat that says, how can one get involved in mentoring or volunteering in the prison system?
So maybe the first thing to point out is that I'm in New York City, and that is a way of indicating that what we're talking about is a system of 50 different states with 50 different systems of incarceration. So we're not talking about the federal system. We're really talking about, if you want to do something like this, first you're going to have to get in contact with whatever local Department of Corrections there might be. And I think you'll discover, as is the case in the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, that there are all kinds of volunteer opportunities. I just went through 2 days ago an orientation, because I'm about to teach at a place, Fishkill State Correctional Facility. And every 2 years, I have to be certified as somebody who can be a volunteer. But they welcome them. And they're really clear, as was pointed out in the documentary College Behind Bars, the biggest thing that people worry about if you're a superintendent in a prison isn't violence or security breakdowns, it's suicide. So volunteers who come in and give folks like Timothy an opportunity to express themselves and have a vision of what could be possible later on, they become really essential. And I'm betting that if you Google something about opportunities to do volunteering in prison, I'm sure if you specify the state or even the municipality, you'll discover that there are all kinds of opportunities. This is especially true if you, for example, are connected to a church, because in the beginning, many of the volunteer opportunities came through because of the chaplain of the prison. They're the ones who made it clear that if a civilian came in on the inside, there was a positive role that they could play to help folk who were struggling with their issues on the inside achieve some kind of peace. So I'm pretty sure that with almost every state in the United States, this idea that there are volunteer opportunities for folk who want to get in contact with and work with folk like Timothy, I'm pretty sure that it exists. And maybe while I've been doing all this talking, if somebody can go to Google and give a where that would happen, that would be the moment. That would be the moment where they say, "Yeah, Doc, we got you. We see what you're talking about." But I do know it's possible. And I do think I want to encourage people to do that. This film was what I would describe as an existence proof, a proof of concept, that if you put in the time, it is not taking a risk. It is doing something that this nation vitally needs, and the outcomes are absolutely glorious. So I'm hoping that you're asking the question about volunteering means that you'll follow up.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fullilove. And we have a couple minutes left. So I have two more questions. And the first goes to a lot of what you all were talking about of like, there just now not being enough hours in the day. And so a huge theme in the piece is this grind culture, right? Of Timothy, you're putting everything into your work, and it is incredible to see. But also this need to slow down and rest. And so just curious about, how do you reconcile those two things, like your need to commit to work and commit to rest and healing? And anyone can speak to that, as well as just the effect of this grind culture and hustle mentality that we have.
Dr. Jeff, this is you.
Well, because we only have a little bit of time left, I'll be very succinct. Thank you, Dr. Fullilove. Like Tim, like the rest of you, I'm one of the people who also work 7 days a week, 14 hours a day. For me, it's therapy. I'm hungry. I'm still hungry, even at this late age, to really achieve and to help others. It's therapeutic. It's about pursuing your dream, but it is also important that you have the proper work-life balance. I can't tell you how many marriages, how many relationships have been destroyed, how many individuals who've just been going nonstop, have ended up getting sick emotionally, physically. So if you want to go at that speed, if that's your speed, that's absolutely fine, but take care of yourself, which means proper eating, proper exercise, proper spirituality, proper rest. And don't, whatever you do, run over the people who are part of your life. Tim.
Timothy, how does that feel? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Timothy?
That's food for me. Because I just I had no concept of rest when I came home. I didn't understand how, as my life began to change socially, as you see, me and Keisha linked up a little bit after I got out. Next thing you know, we're getting married and we're having kids, and I was still trying to go off of what I got out with. And I didn't have no idea of how to transition. Mark, as Alex said, he was a godsend, man. This individual stepped into my life and showed me. He showed me how to rest. I really didn't know how to embrace it. He had to force me. He had to say, "Hey, I'm taking you over here today, and we're gonna get on some water and just hang out in the boat." And I didn't know how to do that. I was like, I need to be working. I got a family on the way. I need to be stacking some money in the bank. And then also, I just felt like if I slowed down, and this was another insecurity and something that I had to battle with. But I was like, if I slow down, I'm gonna have too much time, even though I knew I wasn't gonna get in trouble. It's just this, I guess this was a part of my transition. Like I just felt like I didn't want to give myself any time to slow down. And then when I felt exhausted, then I'll sleep. But I learned that that wasn't healthy. And so, you know, I've been embracing all of what, you know, the doctor just expressed. When it comes my way now, I take heed. I got a rest pattern now though.
Good. Yes, the rest is important, and also this endurance and all of this. And so it's good to hear that, you know, you're finding the balance. So on that note, we are going to have a guided meditation. Keri's going to lead us in that. But before that, just wanted to check in. Timothy, Alex, what are you working on now? Timothy, I know that, you know, some of your music was featured in the film, and so would love to hear about your projects, how we can support you, anything for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things is I've been so busy that I haven't really been able to produce as much as I would like, and so it's slow but steady. You know, I do have a couple of albums, you know, to actually record. I have that much content, but it's just I just had another baby in September, and I've had to learn how to prioritize, you know. So as much as, you know, I'm still writing, I'm still being creative, and so, you know, the goal is to hopefully by 2022, God willing, I will have developed enough of enough of a rest pattern and you know, prioritizing my time with my family, to actually pursue creating more music.
Nice. Well, if there is, you know, a link or email or anything, let us know. We can drop it in the comments so that people can support the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Of course.
I just want to say that I really encourage people, if you see this, to reach out to Timothy and try to help him with his music. He's very unique in his music. He plays the guitar. He's soulful as can be. He's got a unique voice and sound. He also wants to finish his education, and given he could really use, you know, a funded sort of vehicle to get him through education, so he can use that funds to pay for his cost of living and get a little break. I also just had a baby last week. So my life, thank you. My life is a little upside down right now. It's our second. But I am, like I mentioned earlier in the show, I'm working on I proposed a film for a fellowship at Harvard that looks at incarceration and parole and how those affect families, particularly families of color, who are disproportionately represented. Five times the rate for Black people in prison than white people, in particular. And then Latinx is about double to 2.5 times. So, you know, these problems need to be addressed and righted.
Yes. And we thank everyone on this panel for the work that you're doing to just create a more equitable society. Thank you for being with us tonight. Again, Timothy, drop in any links so that we can support you, email, you know, for anyone who wants to get in touch. And now I am going to shift to Keri, who is going to guide us in meditation. Keri, take it away.
Thank you so much, Chandler, and thank you everybody for joining us here tonight for this event. And what we just watched and heard was a bit intense. So I'm recognizing that probably for some of you, some difficult thoughts or emotions might have come up. So I just want to honor that by giving us all just a few seconds to just check in with our breath. Just take a few breaths on our own to really just stabilize your mind and to calm your nervous system. So let's go ahead and do that for a few seconds right now. Okay, so that wasn't the meditation, but we'll get to that later. I imagine that some of you are here right now thinking, what is mindfulness meditation? And how can this sort of practice help me with trauma? So I want to first start by defining what mindfulness is. And a simple definition is paying attention on purpose in the present moment and without judgment. And that simply means that we're choosing to pay attention in this very moment, experiencing it as it is, and without assigning any meaning to anything. And I like to define it using the image of what I call a mental bicep curl. Because what we're doing in this practice is we're choosing an object to focus on. And that could be the breath, sensations in the body, sounds, our footsteps. And then when thoughts come up, we just recognize that thoughts come up. And then we choose kindly and gently to return our attention back to our object of focus. And just a little note here that your mind is meant to think. It's not going to stop thinking. That is what it was designed to do. And I'm not asking you to stop your thoughts. What I'm asking you to do is just to recognize when a thought has come up and you've been distracted, and then return to the breath or your body sensations. And so each time you do that, thought, breath. A thought comes up, return to the breath. Thought, breath. It's like you're doing these mental bicep curls. And with each rep, you're training your mind to come back to the present moment and to focus. And so how can a practice like this help with trauma? And if you're anything like me, you probably spend a large portion of your day thinking about the past. You have guilt, shame, regret, or feel some sort of disappointment about something that happened. And if you're not lamenting the past, then you're probably thinking about the future. You have fear, anxiety, you're worried about something that may or may not happen. So think about it. Guilt, shame, regret, worry, fear, anxiety, insecurity, and all day long. That's super stressful, right? And we all know that the reality is we can't change the past. It's over, it's done, it's gone. But what we can do is we can learn from the past and use those lessons to help us move on. And when we allow our minds to keep revisiting the past and those events, we're essentially just re-traumatizing ourselves over and over again, day in and day out. And we also can't control the future. I think one thing that this year has taught us is that we can't predict what's going to happen. And even when we try to, we're often dead wrong. But what we can do is we can decide to take action right now in this very moment towards the person we want to become and the life we want to lead. And I think this is the crux of what this movie was getting at. So we can choose right now to rewrite our stories. And I think we should put our energy into that. So for the meditation I'm going to guide you through today, we're going to be using sensations in the body and our breath as our objects of meditation to bring us back into the present moment. And I just want to remind you that thoughts are going to continue to come up. And you're just going to redirect your attention back to the object of focus as soon as you can with a huge dose of self-compassion. And we'll start the meditation with an intention, which is one word that represents something you can use a little more of in your life at this time. It could be something like kindness, courage, support, calm. You could just pick a word that resonates with you in this moment. And then following that, I'll be guiding you through a body scan, asking you to notice the sensations in your body, not wishing that you felt any differently. And then just releasing, relaxing, letting go of anything you feel like you're holding on to. And from there, we'll move into a breath awareness practice where we'll be focused on the natural sensations of our breath, wherever we feel it the strongest and wherever is most comfortable for you. And if you feel uncomfortable focusing on your breath or your body, then another alternative is to use the sounds in the room as your object of meditation. And if at any time you feel like you need to leave this practice, go ahead, open your eyes if they were closed, walk around, and you can return to the practice only if and when you feel ready. Please take care of yourself. And so we'll just end the meditation with a moment of gratitude where we'll appreciate ourselves for giving us this self-care practice. We'll acknowledge that by practicing and by our peace and calm growing, that will benefit all those we interact with. And so with that short introduction, we'll move right into the meditation. I'm going to start by getting us into the posture. So if you can be seated in a chair, have your feet firmly planted on the ground, and have your palms face down on your legs, or you can alternatively have them open to the ceiling. And then have your spine upright but not rigid. We want you to be alert but still comfortable. And then have your shoulders relax down. Relax any tension you're holding in your jaw or your face. And then if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. And if not, you can just gaze softly at a spot on the floor in front of you. And we'll start our meditation with our intention. So we'll choose one word that represents something we could use a little more of in our life at this time. Again, it could be patience, confidence, love, support. Just take a brief moment to think of your one word now. And we'll all take a deep breath in through the nose. And then silently repeat your intention and breathe out. And really try to extend your exhale so it's longer than your inhale. We'll do that a second time. Breathing in, intention, and breathing out. And one final time, breathe in, intention, and breathe out and let it all out. And now we'll be moving into our body scan. We're going to be noticing the sensations in our body and releasing and letting go of anything we want to let go of. So we'll start by feeling our feet firmly planted on the ground. And then we'll feel our hands in contact with our legs. And then we'll bring our attention all the way to the crown of our head as we move down into our forehead. And noticing the sensations behind our eyes and around our eyes. Into the cheekbones. Relaxing your jaw and your neck. Coming down into your shoulders. Again, noticing if your shoulders have lifted, and once again, just relaxing them down. And then coming into your chest. You may notice the sensations of your breath moving in sync with the rising and falling of your chest. And just notice that with a gentle curiosity. Again, allowing whatever you experience is to be what it is, to not judge it. And now we'll move into our upper arms. Coming down through our elbow. And into our forearms. And then noticing the sensations in our hands. You might notice some changes in temperature, some tingling. Again, just have a gentle curiosity about what you feel. And we'll come back into our shoulders. And this time we'll come down through our upper back, releasing, relaxing, letting go. Into your middle back, noticing that how you feel now may be different than how you feel when you started. And then coming down into your lower back. And just keep returning to these sensations as many times as you need to. And then coming into your stomach. And then noticing if you're tensing your stomach muscles and just releasing to allow the air to flow freely through. And you could even rest your hand on your stomach and notice your hand in sync with your belly and your breath. And then moving into our hips. Feeling our connection with the chair. Noticing the sensations in our upper legs. Then coming through our knees to our lower legs. Again, letting go and releasing. And then once again, feel your feet being supported by the ground. And now that our bodies are relaxed, let's spend a minute or so concentrating to the natural sensations of our breath wherever we feel it the strongest. You may feel it most strongly in the rising and falling of your belly or your chest, or in the temperature exchange at your nostrils. And again, as thoughts inevitably will come up, just gently return your attention back to the breath. No judgments needed. And we'll be here for about 2 minutes. Allowing ourselves to be here without anything else to do but to appreciate our breath. With each in-breath, we just notice that we're breathing in. And with each out-breath, we relax even further. We'll just continue for about 30 seconds more. Okay, and before we conclude this meditation, let's just take a brief moment to acknowledge and appreciate that by practicing meditation, we're not only benefiting ourselves, but our growing sense of peace and calm benefits all those we interact with. And when you're ready, in your own time, you can start wiggling your fingers and your toes, moving in ways that feel comfortable. And when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, you can begin to open them. And so thank you everybody for joining me in this meditation and for joining us in this event. And now I'm going to turn the microphone over to Alyssa, who will close us out. Alyssa, you're muted.
I said all that, and I appreciate you, Keri. So thank you again. I just want to say thank you one more time to Keri, to all of the panelists for having such an amazing program and a dynamic talkback. Thank you to the team at the Zuckerman Institute. Thank you to our moderator. Thank you to, of course, the Harlem International Film Festival for being such amazing collaborators. And we hope you enjoyed the program. And just as a reminder, you can access the film First Chances using the same link until tomorrow, Friday, January 15th at 7 p.m. You can also access a recording of the talk back on YouTube. So thank you all again, and be well.